Emily Carter stood before the mirror, holding her newborn, and saw a stranger staring back. Her body had changed. Her eyes looked hollow. The man she married looked at her with something worse than indifference. "You became ugly after kids," Jason said before walking out into the rain, leaving her alone with their child. Emily believed love had abandoned her the same way her old body had. But months later, when a man named Lucas called her perfect one, question remained. Had she ever been ugly, or had she simply loved the wrong person? The rental house sat at the end of Maple Street, small and forgettable, which suited Emily just fine. She had moved there 4 months after Jason left, carrying only what fit in her sedan and what she could afford on a part-time income. The neighborhood was quiet, lined with modest homes, where children rode bikes and families grilled on weekends. Emily watched them from her window, sometimes holding her daughter Lily against her chest, wondering if she would ever feel like she belonged anywhere again. She had been different once, before marriage, before pregnancy, before the mirror became an enemy. Emily used to walk into rooms with her shoulders back, used to laugh easily, used to believe that kindness was something she deserved. Jason had loved that version of her, or at least he said he did. He proposed on a beach at sunset, told her she was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen, promised her a life where she would never doubt herself. She believed him because she had no reason not to. The pregnancy changed things slowly, then all at once. Her body stretched and swelled in ways she had not prepared for. Jason stopped touching her halfway through the second trimester. He said it felt strange that he could not see her the same way. Emily told herself it was temporary, that everything would return to normal after the baby came. She believed that love was strong enough to survive discomfort, that vows meant something when things got difficult. But Lily arrived, and Jason looked at Emily like she was something broken. The weight did not fall off the way it did in movies. Her stomach stayed soft, marked with lines that looked like tiny cracks in porcelain. Her breasts ached and leaked, and she walked through the house in old shirts that smelled like milk and exhaustion. Jason stayed late at work, later overnight. When he came home, he barely looked at her. When he did, his expression was cold. The night he left, Emily had been awake for 36 hours straight. Lily would not stop crying, and Emily had tried everything. Rocking, feeding, singing, walking in circles, until her legs felt numb. Jason came home past midnight, smelling like perfume that was not hers. She asked where he had been, her voice barely a whisper because she was too tired to fight. He looked at her, standing there in sweatpants and a stained shirt holding their screaming child, and something in his face twisted. "You became ugly after kids," Jason said, his voice flat and certain, like he was stating a fact about the weather. He walked past her, packed a bag, and left through the front door while rain hammered against the roof. Emily stood in the living room holding Lily, listening to his car pull away. She did not cry. She felt too empty for tears. She just looked down at her daughter and thought maybe Jason was right. Maybe this was who she was now. Maybe no one would ever look at her with love again. The divorce papers came 2 weeks later. Jason did not ask for custody. He did not ask for anything except his freedom and his half of their savings, which was not much. Emily signed everything without a lawyer because she could not afford one and because she wanted it over. She took Lily and moved into the rental on Maple Street, where no one knew her and no one had to see what she had become. She kept to herself those first few months, grocery shopping at odd hours when the store was nearly empty, walks around the block only after dark. She avoided eye contact with neighbors, convinced they could see the same thing Jason had seen, that she was less now, that motherhood had carved something essential out of her and left only exhaustion and shame behind. Lucas Miller lived 4 houses down in a pale blue ranch with a front yard that needed mowing. Emily noticed him the first week she moved in, mostly because his son was loud. The boy could not have been more than 5, and he spent every afternoon riding a scooter up and down the sidewalk, shouting at invisible enemies and laughing at his own jokes. Lucas usually sat on the porch steps, watching the kid with the kind of patience Emily had only seen in picture books about perfect fathers. The first time Lucas spoke to her, Emily was dragging a broken stroller to the curb. One of the wheels had snapped off, and she was trying to wrestle it into the trash bin without waking Lily, who was asleep in the carrier strapped to her chest. She heard footsteps behind her and turned to see Lucas walking over, hands in his pockets, a slight smile on his face. "Need a hand?" Lucas asked, already reaching for the stroller before she could answer. He lifted it easily and dropped it into the bin, then brushed his hands on his jeans like it was nothing. "Those things are built to fail. I went through 3 before I gave up and just carried my kid everywhere." Emily nodded, shifting her weight so Lily would not wake. She wanted to thank him and leave, but he was standing there looking at her like she was a normal person having a normal conversation, and it made her uncomfortable in a way she could not name. "I'm Lucas, by the way," he said, extending a hand. "That loud kid on the scooter is mine, Ethan. Sorry if he's been keeping you up." "Emily," she said quietly, shaking his hand quickly before pulling back. "He's fine. I barely hear him." Lucas grinned, the kind of grin that made his eyes crinkle at the corners. "You're a terrible liar, but I appreciate it." He glanced at Lily, still sleeping against Emily's chest. "How old?" 4 months? Emily said, her hand instinctively moving to cradle the back of Lily's head. She hated this part of conversation, the part where people asked follow-up questions and expected her to sound happy about motherhood instead of exhausted and afraid. But Lucas just nodded. "The hardest part," he said, and there was something in his voice that sounded like he actually knew. "Gets easier around 6 months, then harder again at 2, then easier at 4, then impossible at 13 or so, I've been told." Emily felt the corner of her mouth twitch, almost a smile, but not quite. Lucas noticed and took it as his cue to leave. "Anyway, welcome to the neighborhood," he said, backing toward his house. "If you ever need anything, I'm around. Or if you just want someone to complain about broken strollers with." She watched him walk away, his son zooming past him on the scooter, and felt something she had not felt in a long time. Not attraction, not hope, just the faint sense that maybe not everyone saw her the way Jason had. Maybe some people still saw her as human. After that, Lucas appeared in small ways. He waved when she checked the mail. He helped her carry groceries when a bag split open in the driveway. He made jokes that were not funny, but somehow still made her feel lighter. His son Ethan started saying hi to Lily every time he rode past, even though she was too young to respond. It was nothing, Emily told herself. Just neighborly kindness. The kind of politeness people extended to anyone, not because of who they were, but because that was what decent people did. She kept her distance. She smiled when Lucas spoke to her, but never lingered. She thanked him for his help, but never asked for more. She built walls between herself and anything that felt too much like connection, because connection required vulnerability, and vulnerability required belief that she was worth something. Emily was not sure she had that belief anymore. Jason had taken it with him the night he walked out, and she did not know how to get it back. But Lucas kept showing up, not in a way that felt intrusive or demanding, just there, present. He asked how Lily was sleeping, if Emily needed a recommendation for a pediatrician, if she had tried the coffee shop 2 blocks over, because it was the only place in town that did not burn the espresso. Small things, easy things, things that did not ask her to be anything other than tired and human and trying. Emily found herself relaxing just slightly. She started walking during the day instead of at night. She waved back when Lucas waved first. She let Ethan hold Lily's tiny hand one afternoon when he asked very politely if babies could feel when people were being nice to them. Lucas stood beside her, watching his son be gentle with her daughter, and said, "He's going to be a good big brother someday. If I ever meet someone who can tolerate me long enough." Emily looked at him surprised. "You're not married. Divorced," Lucas said simply. "She left when Ethan was 2. Said she wasn't built for this kind of life. I do not blame her. It's harder than people admit. Emily felt something shift in her chest, a small crack in the wall she had built. Lucas was not pretending. He was not performing happiness or strength, or any of the things people usually performed when they talked about their lives. He was just honest. And honesty, Emily realized, was something she had not experienced in a very long time. She opened her mouth to respond, to maybe say something real for the first time in months, when a car pulled up to the curb. Black, expensive, familiar. Emily's stomach dropped before she even saw the driver's side door open. She knew that car. She knew the man stepping out of it, adjusting his watch, smoothing his shirt like he was about to walk into a business meeting. Jason looked exactly the same. Clean-shaven, well-dressed, the kind of man people assumed had his life together, because he looked like he did. He walked toward her, with the confidence of someone who believed the world owed him space, and Emily felt every ounce of strength she had been slowly rebuilding collapse under the weight of his presence. "Emily," Jason said, his voice smooth and controlled. He glanced at Lucas, then at Lily, then back at Emily with an expression that was almost amused. "We need to talk. About custody." Emily felt her throat tighten. Lucas stood beside her, still holding the grocery bag he had been carrying to his car, and she could sense him watching the exchange with the kind of attention people give to situations that might turn dangerous. Ethan had stopped riding his scooter and was standing near the mailbox, confused but quiet. Lily stirred against Emily's chest, making soft sounds that meant she would wake soon and want to be fed. "Custody," Emily managed to say, her voice barely steady. "You signed away your rights. You didn't want her." Jason smiled, but it was not a real smile. It was the expression he used in business meetings when he knew he had the upper hand and wanted everyone else to know it too. "I signed those papers when I was not thinking clearly," he said, adjusting his watch like they were discussing a minor contract dispute. "I've had time to reconsider. Lily deserves a stable home, a father who can provide for her properly." Emily felt the words hit her like stones. Stable. Provide. As if she was doing neither. As if the past 4 months of sleepless nights and constant worry and trying to keep her daughter fed and safe meant nothing because she lived in a rental house and worked part-time and could barely afford groceries some weeks. She wanted to scream at him to list every night he had not been there, every diaper he had never changed, every time Lily cried, and he walked out of the room like she was someone else's problem. But her voice would not come. She just stood there, holding her daughter, feeling small. "You can't just show up and take her," Emily said finally, and she hated how weak she sounded, like she was asking permission instead of stating a fact. "I'm her mother. The courts won't. The courts will see a struggling single mother living in a neighborhood like this, working how many hours a week? 10-15. Jason's voice was calm, almost sympathetic, which made it worse. "They'll see a father with a stable income, a house in a good school district, the ability to give Lily everything she needs. I'm not trying to hurt you, Emily. I'm trying to do what's best for our daughter." Lucas shifted beside her, and Emily saw his jaw tighten. He set the grocery bag down on the hood of his car, slowly, deliberately, like he was making a decision about whether to stay out of this or not. Emily wanted to tell him it was fine that he should take Ethan inside and let her handle this alone, but she could not form the words. She felt paralyzed, like the person she used to be had left her body, and all that remained was the hollow shell Jason saw when he looked at her. "Look at yourself," Jason continued, his tone softening in a way that felt rehearsed. "You're exhausted. You can barely take care of yourself, let alone a child. I'm offering you a way out. Shared custody at first, then we can revisit the arrangement once you're more stable. You can see her on weekends, holidays. It's generous considering." "Considering what?" Lucas cut in his voice, quiet but firm. Jason turned to look at him for the first time, really look at him, and Emily saw the way Jason's expression shifted. The polite smile faded into something colder, more dismissive. He looked Lucas up and down, taking in the faded jeans and the worn sneakers and the 5 o'clock shadow, and Emily could see the calculation happening in Jason's mind. This man wasn't a threat. This man did not matter. "I don't think this concerns you," Jason said smoothly, turning back to Emily like Lucas had already disappeared. "This is between me and my ex-wife. It concerns me when you're standing in my neighborhood threatening a woman who's done nothing wrong," Lucas said, stepping forward slightly. Not aggressive, just present. "She's taking care of her kid. She's doing it alone. That doesn't make her unstable. That makes her strong." Jason laughed, a short, sharp sound that had no humor in it. "Strong. Have you seen her? She can barely hold herself together. Look at her standing there in sweatpants at 3 in the afternoon, looking like she hasn't slept in days. You think that's strength?" Emily felt her face burn. She looked down at Lily, who was fully awake now, blinking up at her with wide, trusting eyes. She wanted to defend herself, to tell Jason he was wrong, but every word he said landed because part of her believed it. She did look terrible. She was wearing sweatpants. She had not slept more than 4 hours in a row since Lily was born. Maybe he was right. Maybe she was not strong. Maybe Lily deserved better than a mother who could not even look at herself in the mirror without feeling ashamed. "You became ugly after kids," Jason said, his voice dropping lower, meant just for Emily now. "I told you that once, and I meant it. Not just your body. Everything. The way you move, the way you talk, the way you've given up on being anything other than tired. You're not the woman I married, Emily. And I'm not going to let my daughter grow up thinking that's what women are supposed to be." Emily felt something crack inside her chest. The words hit exactly where Jason intended them to hit, in the place she had been protecting since the night he left the place, that whispered late at night that maybe she was broken, and maybe she was unlovable, and maybe everyone who looked at her saw what Jason saw. She opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. She just held Lily tighter and felt her vision blur with tears she refused to let fall. Lucas moved before Emily realized what was happening. He stepped between her and Jason, not touching anyone, but occupying the space in a way that made Jason take a step back. Lucas was not a big man, not particularly tall or broad, but there was something in the way he stood that made him seem immovable. His voice, when he spoke, was calm, steady, the kind of steady that comes from someone who has thought very carefully about what they are going to say and means every word. "The only thing that became ugly," Lucas said, looking directly at Jason, "is the way you treat her. She's perfect." The street went quiet. Even Ethan, still standing by the mailbox, seemed to sense the weight of the moment and stayed silent. Jason stared at Lucas, like he had just said something in a language that made no sense, his expression caught between disbelief and anger. Emily felt her breath catch. Perfect. The word hung in the air, impossible and enormous, and she could not process it. Could not understand why someone would say that about her, why Lucas would put himself in the middle of this for a neighbor he barely knew. Jason recovered quickly, his expression smoothing back into something resembling control. "You don't know what you're talking about," he said to Lucas, his voice tight. "You don't know her. You don't know what she was like before all this. You're just some guy who lives down the street and thinks he's being heroic by defending a damsel in distress." "I know what I see," Lucas said simply. "I see someone who's taking care of her kid, someone who's doing everything she can with what she has. That's worth more than whatever you think you're offering." Jason's face flushed a deep red that spread from his collar to his hairline. He looked at Emily, then at Lucas, then back at Emily, and she could see him calculating his next move. He was not used to being challenged, not used to people standing up to him, especially not in front of witnesses. His mouth opened like he was going to say something, cutting something that would put both of them in their place, but then he seemed to think better of it. "This isn't over," Jason said. His voice hard and final. He pointed at Emily, his finger jabbing the air between them. I'll be filing the paperwork next week. You can keep her for now. But when the court sees what kind of environment you're raising her in, they'll side with me. And you? He turned to Lucas, his lip curling. Stay out of things that don't concern you. Jason walked back to his car, his movements stiff and controlled, and pulled away from the curb without looking back. Emily watched the black sedan disappear down Maple Street, and only when it was completely out of sight did she realize she had been holding her breath. Lily was fussing now, hungry and uncomfortable, and Emily shifted her weight, trying to soothe her daughter, while her own hands shook. Lucas turned to her, his expression soft with concern. Are you okay? Emily wanted to say yes. She wanted to thank him and tell him she was fine and disappear into her house before he could see how close she was to falling apart. But the words stuck in her throat, and instead, she just shook her head. No, she was not okay. She had not been okay for a long time, and Jason's arrival had ripped open every wound she had been trying to ignore. He's serious, Emily said quietly, looking down at Lily. He's going to try to take her from me. He's bluffing, Lucas said, but his voice was uncertain, like he was trying to convince himself as much as her. He can't just take custody because he changed his mind. The courts don't work like that. You don't know Jason, Emily said, and her voice cracked on his name. He's good at getting what he wants. He'll find a way to make me look incompetent. He'll twist everything until it looks like I'm the problem. And maybe... She stopped, the words catching in her throat. Maybe he's right. Lucas frowned. Right about what? Emily looked at him, this man who had called her perfect, and felt a wave of shame so strong it almost knocked her over. Maybe I'm not enough. Maybe Lily deserves better than a mother who can't even afford to fix a broken stroller. Maybe Jason can give her things I can't. Stability, security, a future that doesn't involve living paycheck to paycheck in a rental house. Stop, Lucas said gently. Don't let him do that to you. Do what? Emily asked, her voice rising slightly. Lily whimpered, sensitive to her mother's distress, and Emily rocked her, automatically trying to calm them both. He's telling the truth. Look at me. I'm exactly what he said I am. Tired. Ugly. A mess. You're not ugly, Lucas said, and the certainty in his voice made Emily's chest tighten. You're exhausted because you're doing the work of two parents alone. You're struggling because the person who was supposed to support you walked away. That doesn't make you less. It makes you human. Emily wanted to believe him. She wanted to take his words and hold them close, and let them rewrite the story Jason had been telling her since the night he left. But belief required trust, and trust required the willingness to be hurt again. And Emily was not sure she had that left in her. Every time she opened herself up to something good, it got taken away. Her marriage, her confidence, the version of herself she used to recognize. Why would this be different? Why would Lucas be different? I don't know you, Emily said, and the words came out harsher than she intended. You've been nice to me, and I appreciate that, but you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what it's like to have someone look at you and see nothing but disappointment, to believe you're worth something and then realize you never were. Lucas did not flinch. He just stood there, his hands in his pockets, looking at her, with something that might have been understanding. You're right, he said after a moment. I don't know exactly what that's like, but I know what it's like to have someone leave and make you feel like it was your fault. I know what it's like to wonder if you're enough. And I know what it's like to rebuild when everything feels broken. Emily felt tears slide down her cheeks, hot and unwelcome. She wiped them away quickly, but they kept coming, and eventually she stopped trying to hide them. Lily was crying now too, a thin wail that meant she was hungry and needed to be changed, and Emily felt overwhelmed by the weight of it all. Jason's threats, Lucas's kindness, the fear that she was going to lose her daughter because she could not prove she was worth keeping her. "I should go inside," Emily said, her voice thick. "Lily needs to eat." Lucas nodded, stepping back to give her space. "If you need anything." "I know," Emily interrupted, not unkindly. "Thank you for what you said. But I think it's better if I handle this on my own." She walked toward her house, feeling Lucas's eyes on her back, and did not turn around. Inside, the walls felt too close, the air too heavy. She fed Lily and changed her and put her down for a nap, moving through the motions automatically, while her mind replayed everything Jason had said. Ugly, unstable, not enough. And underneath it all, the one thought she could not escape. What if he was right? Emily sat on the floor of the nursery, her back against the wall, and let herself break. She cried quietly so she would not wake Lily, her hands pressed against her mouth to muffle the sound. She cried for the woman she used to be, for the marriage she thought she had, for the body she mourned, like it was a person who had died. She cried because she was terrified of losing her daughter, and terrified of failing, and terrified that maybe she had already failed just by being who she was. She looked down at her stomach, still soft and marked, and felt a surge of hatred so strong it made her nauseous. This body had betrayed her. It had taken everything Jason loved about her and replaced it with something he could not stand to look at. And now it was going to cost her the only thing she had left. Emily closed her eyes and whispered into the empty room, her voice raw and broken. "I hate this. I hate who I've become. I hate that no one will ever love me again." The words hung in the air, ugly and true, and Emily knew with absolute certainty that she meant them. Emily did not sleep that night. She lay in bed listening to Lily breathe through the baby monitor, watching shadows move across the ceiling, replaying every word Jason had said until they lost meaning and became just noise. Ugly, unstable, not enough. The words circled in her mind like vultures picking at the parts of her that were already dead. By the time the sun came up, Emily felt hollowed out, like someone had scraped everything important from inside her chest and left only the shell. She went through the morning on autopilot, changed Lily, fed her, sang to her while she played on the floor with soft toys that made no sound. Emily moved through her house like a ghost present, but not really there, and she wondered if this was what disappearing felt like. Not all at once, not dramatically, just slowly fading, until one day you looked in the mirror and saw nothing staring back. Around noon, there was a knock on the door. Emily almost did not answer it. She was still in her pajamas, her hair unwashed, and she could not stand the thought of anyone seeing her like this. But the knock came again, softer this time, and she heard Lucas's voice through the wood. "Emily, it's me. I just want to make sure you're okay." She opened the door, a crack, not enough for him to see inside, just enough to prove she was alive. Lucas stood on her porch, holding a paper bag, and looking uncertain, like he was not sure if coming here was the right thing to do. His son Ethan was not with him. It was just Lucas wearing the same faded jeans and old sneakers, looking at her with an expression that was somehow both worried and respectful of her space. "I'm fine," Emily said, and her voice came out flat and unconvincing. "You didn't need to check on me." "I know," Lucas said. He held up the paper bag. "I brought lunch. Nothing fancy. Just sandwiches from the deli. I thought maybe you hadn't eaten yet." Emily wanted to tell him to leave. She wanted to close the door and go back to moving through her house like a ghost and not have to explain to anyone why she was falling apart. But there was something in the way Lucas was looking at her, something that was not pity and not judgment, just quiet presence. And she found herself opening the door wider. "I'm not really hungry," Emily said, but she took the bag anyway. "Thank you." Lucas nodded, his hands going back into his pockets. He glanced past her into the house where Lily was babbling to herself on a blanket and smiled slightly. "She sounds happy." "She doesn't know any better," Emily said, and the bitterness in her voice surprised even her. "She doesn't know her father thinks she'd be better off without me. She doesn't know her mother is falling apart." Lucas's expression shifted, something like pain crossing his face. "Can I come in just for a minute? I won't stay long." Emily should have said no, should have protected what little dignity she had left by not letting him see how completely she had unraveled. But she was so tired of holding herself together, so exhausted from pretending she was fine when everything inside her was breaking, that she just stepped back and let him in. They sat in her small living room, Emily on the couch, and Lucas in the chair across from her, and for a long time, neither of them spoke. Lily made soft sounds from her blanket, reaching for toys she could not quite grasp, and Emily watched her daughter with a mixture of love and fear so intense it made her chest hurt. What if Jason took her? What if the courts looked at Emily's life and decided she was not good enough? What if Lily grew up believing her mother was the failure Jason said she was? "I've been thinking about what you said